All right, guys, here we go. And welcome back to another episode of This Week in Photo. I'm your host, Frederick Van Johnson. Yet another special show this week for you guys. You got a double whammy this week on This Week in Photo. The Angry Millennial is making two appearances on the TWiP network. First on TWiP Talks, which released earlier today, and once again on TWiP proper, which we're recording right now. Jose Rosado, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks, man. Always a pleasure.
Yeah, it's good to have you. I'm excited to hear, your opinions, your angry opinions on today's topics. You're like, how did I get branded angry? I'm not really angry.
No, that's fine. That's accurate. That's accurate.
Awesome. Also joining us, good old friend of mine, Mr. Martin Bailey, coming to us from Tokyo. What's going on, Martin?
Everything's going on. Everything and nothing.
Everything and nothing. That's very nihilist of you. What's happening?
I'm stuck in the office at the moment doing lots of things that catching up on business, but also some creative stuff with the computer. So
yeah, it's like what 9 a.m. over there, right?
It's just after 10. Yeah, 10 a.m.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
For getting creative stuff on the computer, as in geek stuff or photography stuff?
Well, I've actually, over the last week, I've spent way too much time trying to create some music for a Namibia slideshow that I'm putting together at the moment. I finished the slideshow in about a day and a half, which was a bit long, but then I spent the last 4 days trying to create some music that I like for it using various MIDI instruments, and it's driving me crazy.
Creating music? No, yeah, that's too much work.
I know. I'm not creating any music. I'm not going to do that. But I'm knee deep in building this Out of Chicago presentation, and it's I know how you feel. It's like, yeah, I know all this stuff. It's not that long, but and I'm not. My presentations aren't very slide heavy, but still, it's like. When you're anal retentive, man, building slides, it doesn't.
Yeah,
it's a problem. Yeah. It's a problem.
If any old crap would do, I'd be finished in half an hour. But it's
yeah, exactly. I got to get into that any old crap will do mode. I don't know.
I mean, you're getting to that age. It's approaching.
No, it gets worse as you get older. And come on, see, you keep sticking your hand into the lion's cage. And you're like, why does my arm keep getting mauled? I don't understand. All right, I'm gonna take pity on you because you're new.
That's fine.
That's fine. All right, guys, let's jump into this week's featured stories. The first story is about Leica. So they just dropped a $6,000 camera, and they took the display off of it to get more of a retro look.
Yeah.
And. Yeah. And let's just start on a positive note. This is awesome. The camera looks beautiful. Everything it seems like Leica makes is just, it's like almost you don't want to shoot with it. It needs to go on a shelf, like a Roman shelf in your house or a pedestal in the middle of the room with lights on it and, with an armed guard. And I look at this thing and I'm like, this is beautiful, but why do you, it's like digital flogging. Like, why would you punish yourself, and I understand a challenge and restrictions and less is more and all that, but it's like, I'm going to get a car and I'm going to, just for the heck of it, I'm going to remove the gearbox, because it's too efficient. Jose, you first. What do you think? I may be off base, but, I'll hear you.
I mean, to me, it's like basically taking the Nikon DF.
Yes.
Taking it to a whole nother level of hipster snobbery that even me, I'll be honest, so David Hobby, there was I believe it was Petapixel article, and it said literally the best part about shooting with a Leica is how it makes you feel. And I think they were serious. And he literally wrote, that is the most Leica thing I've ever read, and I was dying. I mean, David's funny, but that was probably the funniest thing I ever heard him say, because it's true. I mean, look, I'm no snob. I mean, I shoot with a D4. It's an expensive camera. It's the same price tag. It was $6,000 new, but at the same time, I can appreciate Leica for what it is. I can't think of many other cameras that can go through World War II and still be working today. That kind of thing, and they are who they are. No one's gonna argue that.
No, Leica has even before that whole kind of Fuji fanboyism kind of started, where people just sort of identify and come to fists and fights and wrestling over their camera brand. Leica was the first one to kind of start that. I mean, like these other
Hmm.
camera brands like Canon, um, Nikon, etc. Yeah, of course, people, they get the Stockholm syndrome and they start loving their gear, of course. But but with Leica and Fuji and those guys, it just goes to a whole new level. And it
Yeah.
seems like, I don't know, Martin. I want your thoughts on this. I know you don't shoot Leica, but when you look at something like this in these companies that are taking photography in the direction of, okay, everyone else is giving you 4K and 4K photo and stabilized video and ultra low light sensitivity from Sony's, all that kind of stuff. We're going to go in the opposite direction. We're going to give you less. In fact, we're going to next year in 2017 we're going to release a $20,000 camera that shoots film.
I mean, to be fair, real quick, I think it's the fact that they're going in the opposite direction, right? Being a little bit different, and I'll give them
Yeah,
credit there. But
yeah. I don't know, Martin. What do you think?
That's what you just said there, Frederick. That's exactly what I said. One of my apprentices in the Arcanums said that posted a link to it a few days ago, and I said if I want to go that retro, I'll just shoot film, and then I get the pleasure of developing it as well. And
Yeah.
I mean, that to me, there's value in that. And as you've both said, Leica's Leica, and everyone loves Leica. I've never owned one. But it doesn't mean that I would love to have one of those hanging off my neck every so often. But to me, it would be more like an accessory than a camera.
Mm-hmm.
They're beautiful cameras. Everyone knows that. But I really don't see the point in taking. It's like, I mean, you said the gearbox. To me, it's almost these days. It's almost like just removing the steering wheel, because we
it's
rely.
like a self-driving Tesla. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we did depend so much now on looking at. I mean, the way I shoot, I exposed to the right, and so I always I'm looking at the histogram. It's part of my shooting workflow. It's part of how I get the best quality images, and sure, I shot film, and I've been playing around with a twin lens reflex that I bought last year,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a lot of fun. But I think to me that's all it is. It's more a way of having fun with the gear, and that would be for me probably the same reason why I would buy a Leica. If I was a lot more wealthy than I am, I would probably have a couple anyway. But when you have to be careful about how you spend your money, you don't necessarily want to be spending $6,000 on a camera that you can't use to the full. And we've got technology now that enables us to do so much with photography that it just feels like a step in the well, not in the wrong direction, but it seems like a step back. And
Yeah.
and that of course is what Leica are trying to do with this. So
Mhm.
and
But I wonder if we're looking at it different from the wrong perspective, because I tend to look at this stuff from, it's about the image, and it's the art, and the camera and all that stuff is a means to the end, which is why I take the kind of the tongue-in-cheek stance of, hey, you have Stockholm syndrome about your gear, when really it's about the final photo. No one looks at great works of art, paintings from Da Vinci, and they're saying, I wonder what kind of brush he used for that, man. No, he used a camel hair brush, not the cheap goat's hair brush. All the
and there's certainly something to be said for the gear inspiring your photography. I mean, I know that even I'm sure everyone at some point you've not felt quite as inspired to go out, and then you get a new lens or a new something, and all of a sudden you're all flamed up. You fired up. You want to get outside with your camera, and I mean, sometimes the gear can just inspire new work, and I can imagine having a camera such as this new Leica, when you don't have the ability to chimp, whether you've got the desire or not, it would for some people change the way they shoot, and I'm sure it will be an inspiration in some ways as well.
Is it
Um,
fashion though? I mean, it feels like it's fashion. Jose, is this like the
I
trade show camera that you carry with you to impress other photographers at
Okay,
PPE?
I could see that, but I think I agree with Martin's last point, where you know it. So like we all know, right? When you get into photography, you get good bodies, and then you get like different lenses. But then when you really are like passionate about the craft and everything else, then suddenly you you own certain things out of respect for the industry. You know, like I'll have a mirrorless camera just to see what mirrorless is like. I may not shoot with it all the time, but I have an A7 and I like it because it's not the same form factor as my D4. And you know, I can still put nice Zeiss lenses on it and stuff, but I would never say I'm just going to go all in one direction. You know what I mean? Like I would never put all my eggs in the mirrorless basket just cuz. But like he said, I think when you get to a point where if you have the money, you have the means, and you genuinely like the craft, yeah, like when I get my Sony out, I do shoot a lot different than when I shoot with my D4. You know,
How
like
so? That's interesting. How do you shoot differently?
well, for instance, the reason why I got it was because I wanted something lighter and smaller to be more inconspicuous shooting in like cityscapes in the city and
Hmm.
traveling. So, you know, if I know that, I might not take it to go shoot a live sports event, but I'll take it when I'm just walking around and kind of want to just kind of work and move a little bit slower
Hmm.
than I would with my D4.
Yeah. The
Um,
D4 is obvious that you're there as a professional photographer, whereas when you go mirrorless, it's debatable. At least right now, it is
yeah.
debatable whether you're just a regular guy with a point and shoot or a professional photographer.
Right. I mean, to be fair, let's all admit it here. Call a spade a spade. Even with a DSLR, you have dentists and doctors who just have one DX for the hell of it,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
walk around and
Right,
just
of
have no
course,
idea
and
what's
that's
going
where
on.
that's where Leica's, and that's where I'm trying to get to. Is that the market? Is the market split on and with some gray area in between, where on one side there's a people that couldn't care less about what they're shooting with as long as it allows them to execute the vision that they have in their head and get that image, and then on the far left there are the people that, yeah, they're okay shooters, but they're concerned about appearances and, what shoes am I wearing, and do those shoes
Yeah.
match my camera case, and
Right.
you
Right.
know, and,
I,
and then the
yeah.
people in the middle, it's
Yeah.
not black or white. People in the middle
Right.
that are like, a little bit of both. I don't know.
Right.
Which is
I
it?
mean, to me, I think of Leica. I think of two kinds of people. I think of actual hard chiseled photojournalists who cover some serious stuff,
Hmm.
and then you have doctors and dentists who have way too much money on their
But that used to be the
hands.
case. I mean, in the old days, in the war, like with Noctway and all those guys out there in mud and, sleeping in tents for days, to get these phenomenal shots. Leica was there,
Mm-hmm.
and Leica helped change the world in that respect because the
Mm-hmm.
cameras made it through all that stuff flawlessly, which is
Yeah.
why they're still here today. Like you said,
Yeah.
they made it through war and all that stuff, and they're still going strong with their brand intact. But
Mm-hmm.
those days, not to take anything away from Leica, but there are other viable alternatives for a percentage of the cost these days. If your end result is to, I need a camera that's going to allow me to walk through the Sahara and
Mm-hmm.
come out with images on the other side. It's no longer the domain of only the Leicas out there.
Right. Yeah. 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 Like you said, technology. I think that's what's happening. Technology has come to a point where it created a level playing field, and
Hmm.
Leica is just saying, you know what, we're kind of going to bow out a little bit and not go backwards, but just go in a little bit of a different direction. And
Mm.
in that sense, you can't argue. They've been around long enough. They can do whatever the hell they want.
Yeah, no, and
They're
I
still going to sell cameras. Yeah.
respect to Leica. Leica's like the Tiffany's of photography, right? They can they can do whatever, they can price their diamonds at whatever they want. Martin, given what I said before, that kind of bifurcation of the photography space with, the pure, I don't care what I'm shooting with artists on one side, and on the other side the other guys that care what they're shooting with and what people perceive, of their gear. Where do you fit in there? Which guy are you? I already know the answer to this, but where do you fit in there? You're so superficial, I know.
Uh, so no, the thing is, I like I said, I would love if I had the disposable cash to buy this camera. I probably would, but I would still, if I'm going to spend $6,000, I would spend it on. I would get a different Leica,
Yeah,
one
yeah.
with a
Yeah.
back that I can actually use
Yeah.
to view the images. I can see the appeal, but I think it's. I mean, I keep coming back to what was it? I think it was in that a movie. I forget even the actors now. A long while ago, where I think that they were doctors or something, just like Jose's saying, and they were trying to get out of somewhere, and the wife said, "Oh, wait a minute, I forgot my Leica," and she has to run back in for the Leica, and it's like life or death situation. I think people do. Once if you own one, you love it, and I would love it. I would really. I'd love to own a Leica.
Yeah, let's be honest, who wouldn't love a beautiful
exactly
old school heritage Ferrari? I mean, of course.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like,
It would feel strange though. It would be like I'm not denying it. If someone got me one, I would love to have like a just to play with and walk around and shoot with it. And they're amazing cameras, but I just think about it from like if you save up all this money and you go buy a Tesla, you know, you get 150 grand and you get your Tesla S decked out properly, and now you have this Tesla, and now you're like, well, I don't want to park it over there. You know, I want to park in a handicap spot and risk getting a ticket because I don't want anybody messing with. You know, and I think is that a similar feel for this Leica? You're like, okay, I'm going to take my Leica out of its velvet case that it came in. I don't want to shoot with it. Are you kidding? I don't care if there's a riot going on. I'm not going to shoot with my Leica. You know, I might scratch it. You know, I don't know.
I think you're always going to have that. You're always going to have the people who literally forget what it is at its core, right? Yeah. So car guys who never get on it. And you're going, dude, you bought a Ferrari for a reason. You got to let that thing breathe.
You polish it every weekend.
Yeah, you got to get on it every once in a while. But then, like you said, then it comes down to the purists, and it comes down to the people who have the means to appreciate it, but not really actually get their hands dirty and that kind of thing. I mean, like Martin said, if I had that money, I agree. I'd buy one with a back, and I'd put gaffer tape on it if I really wanted to.
Yeah,
that's what I'm doing with my cameras. Yeah. All of my cameras have black gaffer tape over what they are, because just because it's for twofold, because it's for photographers and for normal people, you know, or other people, because other people are like, hey, that's a nice camera, what is that? And I don't want them to like see the name and be like, oh, you shoot that, what is that? And then photographers, it's almost like in Silicon Valley, people instantly judge you, and I guess maybe it's California or the world. People instantly judge you based on what you're driving and where you work. If they know what you're driving and where you work, they can infer if you're worth talking to or not, right?
Have you ever seen the show Veep?
Yes.
So there's this one scene where Julia Louis-Dreyfus, right?
Yeah, Julia Dreyfus, yeah.
So there's this one scene where there's these two guys who are just basically White House staffers, and they're sitting there. One of them has a 5D Mark II, and he's shooting, and he goes, "Oh, how you like it? How you like that 5D?" He goes, "Oh, it's great, Got some great images." He goes, "Yeah, I have a 1D," and he goes, "Oh, that's cool." And he's just like trying to like not converse with them. He goes, "So, why didn't you get a 1D?" He's like, "'Cause this 5D Mark II is just as good. It's fine." "Oh, well, you know, I have a 1D." Goes, "Yeah, let me ask you something." He goes, "Are you taking pictures of like fish jumping out of the water and getting like 12 frames a second and crystal clear detail?" "No." "Then why the hell did you buy a 1D?" And they just start going back and forth, and it was the most hysterical thing ever. And the guy he obviously doesn't know how to use it. And he just goes, "Well, yeah, but because it's a 1D, he didn't get it, you know, And the other guy was more of a utilitarian and was like, dude, you don't need that much camera if you're not using it for its purpose.
But you think about the influx of photography is one of the, if not the fastest growing hobby in the U.S. and I don't know, maybe the world or some parts of the world at least. And you look at when people that are jumping into photography with lots of disposable income, they get influenced. You know, you get excited about this new thing you're getting in. You start buying magazines and going to blogs. And you're like, and you start building your heroes. You're like, hey, Martin Bailey. Oh, look at his work. I want to shoot like Martin. Jose Rosado. I want to shoot like Jose. Look at those shots he's doing. Yeah. What do they shoot with? Oh, Martin shoots with this. I have to have that camera.
No,
they go buy that camera.
The same regardless. Thing with cycling. Yeah, you have guys who spend $5,000 on a bike because they can.
Yeah.
And then you sit there and go, oh, it's the same one that Lance Armstrong rides. It's like, well, does it make you as fast as Lance Armstrong? Probably not. You're out there getting smoked by a 65-year-old dude on a steel, 80s Panasonic bike. I mean, what's the point?
Well, granted, if it was a Lance Armstrong bike, it would probably have like some sort of chemical booster rocket on it.
Comes with the boat built in.
Yeah, yeah, and it would deny having that booster rocket
Like
on
you
it
literally
until.
you sit on the saddle and you're like, what just poked me in the ass?
Exactly. Why is Jose's bike so fast? Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I can't tell you. It's just me. I don't know. Martin, when you look back, what was it like? Leica was like a year ago or 2 years ago, maybe a little bit more. They came out with their M model that
The
was
black and white one.
the black and white, yeah, monochrome, M for monochrome,
Yeah.
and it was the same kind of argument. Less is
Yeah.
more. We're taking stuff away. It's romantic. It makes you get back to real photography. Where did you weigh on that? Is that a good thing, or could you just put your awesome, more expensive camera in a mode where it's shooting monochrome?
You know, again, I think it's more about whether it inspires the photographer or not. I don't see the point of it. I honestly, I think that the shooting in black and white when you've got no control over the conversion is, I don't know, it only works for certain things. I mean, when I look at photos from the M, I think Henri Cartier-Bresson, you know, and that's because I mean it feels the same way, but he was of course shooting with black and white film and had no control over the conversion. But I think so on that same line, I think that they're great for street photography and things like that, where you don't necessarily want to be playing around pumping up the reds to make them darker or taking the blues down to make them lighter or whatever. You know, I think that it's when you want what comes out of the camera to be the end product, they're great. And I'm sure that, you know, for street photography and various types of photography, they really are an inspiring tool. But I'm nature and wildlife predominantly, and when I convert something to black and white, I want the freedom to be able to tweak the color information in the original raw file to make reds darker or lighter, blues darker or lighter, and then you end up with a much more inspiring final product. And I've seen, even recently again, I've seen landscape work done with the M, and honestly, it's uninspiring. It just doesn't convey the beauty of the landscape because it's flat. You can't do anything with the contrast. I mean, you could argue I might pump up the contrast in my black and white images too much, but that's how I like that's the look that I like.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, so and it takes away the freedom to do that. So even if I decided I was going to shoot without the LCD, I would rather have no LCD than only black and white, honestly.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. I mean, I don't know. I just think $6,000. And I'm looking at the Leica page now. Let me share this with you guys. Looking at the Leica page, and I'm thinking, you know, $6,000. You get this awesome camera. Of course, it's beautiful. You love it, and then you take this thing out to Namibia or Botswana or, you know, Vancouver or someplace, and you're shooting with it, and then you're like, oh man, that shot would look great. And you know, if you say it's one of these monochrome cameras, you're like, oh, that shot would look great if I was shooting color. You don't, well, you don't. And I understand the exercise in restrictions, but I'm just like, I don't know. It just, you know, would you get this camera and then carry a smaller mirrorless camera that was more functional just in case you needed to get that? In which case, why not just get a more capable camera?
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, like one thing I do that some people get and some people don't. I think mostly wedding photographers get it. Is like when I'm shooting certain stuff, if I'm literally looking to get in like an emotive space, I'll put it on monochrome in my Nikon, even though I'm shooting raw. So on the back of the camera, it'll look nice and punchy. It'll look, you know, very sharp and contrasty, but that's just because I want to see it like how I envision it. But when I put it on my computer, suddenly it's a flat color file because it's a raw file. But I'll always still do it just so I can say, okay, this could be what it would look like. Gives me an idea of how I might edit it, you know, in post. But it's I still do it. So I guess under that same way of thinking of this, only it's like it's literally, you know, like you said, it's very restricted in a lot of
And speaking of restricting this camera, another first is at least for late model cameras, it only shoots DNG, raw DNG files, meaning no JPEG, none of that stuff. And again, for me, I'm this. Maybe it's because I'm just like a nerd, and I like the Wi-Fi. I like to be able to connect to my camera through Wi-Fi and pull off a JPEG and play with it and send it out. You know, none of that with this. It's almost like you're like, okay.
What camera do you have that it works? I have the
all
first.
of my cameras.
I have really? I have the first year A7.
Well, yeah, that's your problem right there.
Yeah, and then I know, but then I have my D4.
Sorry, alpha mirrorless guys.
It's old enough that literally, I don't know if you remember this, when the D4 came out, they go, oh, it's got Wi-Fi capability. If you buy, it was like $700 or $800 add-on.
Yeah.
That gets stuck to the side of the camera, and I'm like, dude, you just robbed me for $6,000. Don't try and tell me I need that.
Exactly.
So
that's why I shoot Lumix in all of my cameras. It works. There's a Wi-Fi button. You hit it. You run the app, and you're in your camera. You're in your camera right there.
Yeah.
You know, that's the way it works.
Yeah, must be nice.
Yes. Yeah, but then again, I don't have your D4 and your, all the stuff your D4 offers. So everything's a trade-off.
Yeah.
Everything's a trade-off.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
There's no one right answer for anyone. It's dependent on what you need to shoot and the right tool for your jobs, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we'll link over to these articles. This story came to us from 9 to 5 Toys, but we'll link over to the MD and show the gallery and all this stuff. It's a pretty camera, but again, I just think like 6K, man. I get that Tesla thing where it's like, oh, I want a Tesla.
No, you said
even Tesla's different. Tesla's different because you buy a Tesla, you're buying state-of-the-art everything. You're buying into the future. It's not like, Ford comes out with a Model T and charges $175,000 for it.
Right. But it's also like you again, it's all personal preference, like you said, where if you're a car guy, right? Like some people say, oh, well, I love the Dodge Viper. And then other car guys will go, well, if you're going to go American and you're going to go with power, that's a way overpriced car. You might as well go with a Corvette, or like a Z06 Corvette because you're spending less money and getting more bang for your buck.
Yeah.
But then again, it becomes, but it's not like the styling of a Viper. Well, then, okay, you're prioritizing other things differently than most people and do what you want,
Yeah. And what are you shooting? You said, Jose, you're shooting the D4 right now?
Mm-hmm.
The D4 and Sony A7?
Mm-hmm. So speaking of, you were saying the funny gaffer tape thing, and that's what I do too. But the funny thing is, the reason why I do it is one, there's that on my main body, and then my D3S has a different variation, so I know just looking at them really quickly which one's which.
Yeah, but yours is orange. Yours that's drawing attention. Mine is black. It's the whole point is to not draw attention.
Mine draws attention because it's covered, and I used to use black, but then I just ran out of black gaffer tape. But I also shoot a lot of car racing and stuff, so visibility is kind of big.
Okay, well that makes sense. That makes sense.
And then also, I've noticed a lot of people. What I did in the beginning too was, they were saying that the weakest point on all these weather sealed bodies was that body line right here.
Oh.
So that's why I covered it originally. I didn't really care about the Nikon, but I was like, if that's the only vulnerability on this camera, I might as well not make it. That's the one thing that works.
If I was to walk around with like orange gaffer tape on my camera someplace, I bet you the questions I would get would be like, oh, is that a prototype of something? Is that new?
Yeah.
It's like those secret prototype cars that they make while they're road testing them.
They put that really, the second you look at it, you're getting epileptic seizures. They put that crazy paint kind of wrap on it. Yeah. So I don't know. The other reason I put tape on my cameras is to make them look less pretty. So you look cheap and less desirable for theft. Less getting robbed.
Yeah, and it's psychological for me because it's like, it's not an object of like I have to coddle it. This is a tool I can throw it around and
same here. That's why mine's orange. It looks like a construction camera.
Yeah, you should be able to throw it around. And Martin, you're shooting. What are you shooting again?
I'm shooting with two 5D SRs at the moment. I used to. When you were talking about the 1DX earlier, Jose, I mean, I was thinking, I remember many years ago, I when the 1DS was 1DS Mark II, I think it was
Yeah,
like
I used to
it
have
was
one.
the flagship of Canon.
Yeah.
And I worked hard for a number of years to be able to save up to buy one of those cameras. And when I finally got it, I was thinking, okay, now this is it. The resolution's there, all of that.
LCD this big.
Yeah, yeah.
Remember how little it was?
And then like a few weeks later, they brought out the 5D, the
Yeah.
original 5D, I think it was, with the same megapixels. And I'm thinking, okay, so that's just screwed me. But I was disappointed at the time. But then, I mean, the main reason that I saved up for the 1DX was the weatherproofing. And for a number of years, I had 3 1 series cameras. I had the 1D S Mark II, the 1D Mark IV, and the 1DX. And all of the time, it was for the weatherproofing. And those cameras are like bricks. They really are great cameras. But when it came down to it, the 7D at a third, sometimes a quarter of the price of the 1DX was almost as fast and almost weatherproof. Not weatherproof, but it was enough weatherproof.
Yeah, like a magnesium alloy body. It was like the cylinders. Like, yeah.
And so I bought the 7D Mark II, and then a year later, when the 5DS came out, I bought my first one, and within a week ordered the second, because I knew I was never going to be able to go back to anything else. And I sold my 1DX to pay for it paid for the 5DS. And so now I'm just shooting with 2 of those. I think that there's the point there was going to be that there's a certain amount of status in the Canon 1 series bodies. But I do love the weatherproofing, but at the end of the day, if it comes down to being able to make larger photos, the 1DX Mark II is apparently going to have better autofocus. But I would say that some of the features, some of the things that they built into the 5DS autofocus, actually make the autofocus better than the 1DX, and so you don't get the same frame rate. But I was nailing focus in a split second on eagles swooping down over a high contrast sea and things like that. So
we're splitting hairs with all this stuff, though, because you look at these cameras today versus cameras from 10, 15, 20 years ago, and you look at the work that was being produced 10, 15, 20 years ago. There's not a whole lot of delta, as some people like to say, but there's not a whole lot of space between those shots and the shots that are happening today. In a lot of ways, the shots from yesteryear are superior with inferior technology, right? It's not like Martin, you're like, this one I can nail the focus and the 900 focus points and all this stuff.
Right.
It's
it's funny. Like you just said it. Like nowadays, people walk into my photo classes with a $500 camera that literally has the same high ISO performance as my D4, and that kind of makes me cringe. And then I'm like, that's not the only thing that counts. But again, technology, they come out with a new body every 6 months.
You got to keep fueling that monster, because those companies need to stay in business, so they got to come up with new things that you absolutely have, and in order for you to take good photos, of course you need the next version, because it has these 5-axis image stabilization, and it's ISO 7 million and all this stuff. You have to have that if you want to be a good photographer and shoot like Martin and Jose. Come on, But the reality is you don't, and you could get by with a film camera if you have an artistic vision. You can get by with your phone if you want to, if you have an artistic vision, and you're just.
That's the one thing that impresses me. People who shoot with a phone, but it looks like a DSLR. You know what I mean? Like the attention to detail and the patience. I'm like,
You know what? That I've got to add that although I totally agree with the statements and the idea behind all of that, there is still, of course, and I'm just stating the obvious here, but a crappy photographer is not going to make anything good with the top of the range cameras, and a really good photographer is still going to make great work with a crappy camera. But there's a crossover point where you do need a certain amount of the technology to, you know, like autofocus is gonna get you more killer shots than you know, a good. I know people. I know a guy, an old gentleman here in Japan, used to be a winter sports photographer. Shot the Olympics with. He actually took the first prototype of an autofocus camera from Canon. They gave it to his boss. They gave it to his boss and said, "Test this at the next Olympics for us." And his boss was too old school and said, "No, I'm not going to do that. Yeah, you shoot with this." And he gave it to the guy that I know. And he was shooting with it at some Olympics, and he said at the time, he said it was a total mess because we were used to what they would do was they would just focus at a certain point on the track where they knew the skier was going to be at a certain angle, and they would just get that shot. And of course the result is that they get the killer shot, but that's all they get. And I think the difference now is that you know, I can come back from a trip with 500 pretty good shots of an eagle, as opposed to one or two, and it's arguable.
I think you said it. I think you said it. The only difference is the keeper rate. Like your keeper rate's better, and that's it. And the great thing is, it's really funny. The keeper rate's better, but the like getting those shots is cheaper, right? It's not like film. The keeper rate should be better back then because it was so expensive to keep shooting rolls and rolls and rolls.
Because you had to be good. Back then you had to be good. You had to understand your craft in order to get the shot. These days, you know, you still have to understand your craft or the craft.
It's spray and pray.
Not so much because the force takes over and we'll get the right shot for you. So Jose, that said, and here's a pointed question: is the artisanship in photography these days, because of the rapid and insane pace of innovation in the photography space, is the artisanship gone and going away because you could put it on auto or portrait mode and make a fantastic portrait, whereas in yesteryear you needed skill?
Right. I think like Martin said it. It's literally just you get more usable stuff. That's it. I mean, because you have to remember, for the hundreds of years that cameras are around before the digital revolution in the last 15, right? Like it was a trade. It wasn't, you know, you had like an apprentice who spent years under you learning the craft. You saved for years to get your own photo equipment because the only people that could afford it were working professionals. And then all of a sudden, within a matter of years, anyone can go out and buy a camera and be a photographer. And it's like the good and the bad, right? I mean, look at like podcasting, right? In the beginning, it was like only the super uber nerds knew how to do it, and bandwidth was expensive and all that kind of stuff. And then now anyone can use their iPhone and make a podcast. So it's kind of like the barrier of entry gets lower, but I still think even though you have a huge influx of people who maybe are not as serious or whatever, I think the old standard holds true that, you know, it's like a good thing and a bad thing because more people are suddenly doing photography, that's good. More people are suddenly into photography, that's good. But in the end, it doesn't matter because if you're worth your salt, you don't care if you're in a room full of 5 people or 50,000 people. If you still know what you're doing, you're gonna be noticed. You know, you're gonna still rise to the top. Right.
Yeah. Martin, what about you, man? Is the age of artisanship in photography behind us only to be replaced by AI?
And I think it's up to the individual. You know, there's definitely there are always going to be people that are more conscious, more aware of honing their craft and really taking it to a different level. And there's always going. I mean, I've seen professionals that just sort of literally wave their camera around with the finger mashed down on the button and then select something later. And I've also seen professionals that work really hard at their craft and are, you know, totally rocking it. And that's I mean, I think it really depends. We all decide how we're going to shoot. I prefer to know the craft and to be able to.
That's the fun part. That seems like for me, that's when I first started getting into photography.
Exactly.
It's like, oh man, I want to learn about light and the different qualities of light and composition. It sounds geeky, but it was fun because you like it's like the only career where you could go out into the world to dinner or hanging out in the park and without a camera and still look around and be learning stuff. You're like, hey, that shadow is produced by a specular light source.
Yeah.
You know,
And
you know.
I think that to me, I mean, that was when I was first interviewed years ago. I remember answering a part of a question about why I got into photography or something like that. And to me, I mean, I'm an engineer, and the way I think, I'm an engineer. But I've always had this sort of an artistic streak as well that I'd like, whether it's good or whether I'm actually good at it or not. I feel as though there's a part of me that wants to make art, and there's a part of me that wants to twiddle knobs and understand the science behind it.
Yeah.
And I think that with photography, it's like an amalgamation. I love that word, an amalgamation of the two.
And Martin, by the way, just to interrupt you, this is a family show, so it nix the conversation about twiddling knobs and stuff like that. I have to bring it down to the gutter whenever I.
I'll be careful on that one. Try not to twiddle my knobs in public.
Yeah, please don't. Refrain from that. The Japanese government frowns on that. Oh man, this is great. This is a great show, guys. I appreciate you guys. Diving into this. And Jose, you see how TWiP goes, right? This is what we do.
Yeah. But what I like what Martin said. What's interesting is I think the one thing that is very brings a lot of people together in terms of photography is just that you have the left brain people who are pure artists who could not tell you what the settings were in a photo they took, and then you have the engineers who just love literally reverse engineering how a photo is taken and literally geeking out on every single tiny aspect of how a camera works or how light works.
Yeah.
And
that was me.
It's amazing because you have both, and they both can exist in this space quite nicely,
Yeah.
And I tell people all the time, like, I'm a pretty technical photographer. That's how I learned. Like, my first job was in a very high-end studio with all 1D cameras and Bronco lighting and light meters and all that kind of stuff. But I learned the same way you guys learned, where I just, maybe I was self-taught. Like, I just literally the playing with it, the let's see what happens here and what happens here, and starting to suddenly think like a photographer, and being able to not even like know how something was shot, looking at a cover or something like that, but even just, to me, I tell people, like, when they learn, suddenly something turns on in your brain that you think and see everything as a photographer, to where I'm walking with someone through the city having a conversation, I'll just stop walking and look at something, and they'll go, what is it? And I go, look at that light.
Yeah.
Like, look at the way that light just hits that building, hits that window, and they're like, what the hell are you talking about? And I'm looking and going,
see?
You don't see that? Like, that's awesome, and you appreciate certain things more. I think that's the best thing about photography once you start learning it. And I tell people all the time, it sounds really sad. I tell them, I go, this time in your photographic career, when you're learning how to work a camera, and suddenly things click literally in your head, it's amazing. And honestly, I think as working photographers, we can attest that as years go by, you're always just trying to recapture that.
Yeah.
Like, that's it.
It's true. It's
Between personal work, balancing personal work with paid work, or personal projects or whatever, you're just trying to get back to that point where no expectations are put.
The other cool thing about photography is a couple things. So the one cool thing that I still don't understand to this day is how light works, right? I mean, I understand I understand how it works and what it's supposed to do and how it behaves, but even astrophysicists don't understand exactly how light or gravity work, and that's part of our career field. Photography means the recorder of light. So we're recording this magical thing that even the smartest people on the planet don't understand exactly how it operates. So that's the one thing that keeps me going in this career. The other thing is, it's doing photography is, for me at least, it's kind of an amalgamation of all these different things. So like Martin was saying, there's the geeky part of it, where you get the knobs and all this stuff. And then there's the, the science of it, which is straight up physics, right, that you're dealing with, technology, and then I like photographing or shooting people, or photographing people, sorry, NSA. But I like photographing people, and there's the psychological aspect of how do you elicit the poses and the expressions and all that, and it all works
comfortable.
Yeah, it all works together because you have to be competent with your tools, and then you're shooting this model who may or may not be comfortable in their own skin yet, so you got to get the shot, and then there's the lights, and how do they work, and how should they positioned, and be positioned in the quality of that light. Is it soft? Is it specular? Is it diffuse? You know, how do I do all that stuff? And it's all in a split second. You know, and then the cool thing about our hobby slash profession is you, like, at that end of it, you're a pro because you're thinking through all these different nuances. But as you recede back into amateur and beginner, you can still do that stuff. You know, with today's cameras, you can still do all that stuff. You just relinquish a certain amount of control of it to your camera, and then as you get better and better, you take more and more control over, and now you're there. So.
I tell people all the time, I go, your digital cameras are great. They're very capable pieces of technology. But like you just said, in the beginning, when you have it on auto, the camera works under the assumption that you're stupid. And then it literally will just show you certain things. You don't even know why it's doing it because it won't show you certain settings. And then the more you learn, the more you're like, oh, I can actually change that setting? Yeah, because when you're going from full auto to scene mode to, you know, aperture priority or shutter priority, suddenly the camera's like, oh, you got this? All right, yeah, go ahead. You know?
And the magic of all that is even with all these different scene modes and this and all these different bells and whistles, the camera it's still doing. It's like Taco Bell. You know, Taco Bell has like 4 ingredients. You know, they just mix them together.
Different types of raccoon meat.
If you go into a Taco Bell and look at the menu and kind of blur your eyes, all you see is brown, red, yellow, and maybe some white for sour cream. Right? That's it. And it's the same with photography.
Look at Martin. Look at Martin. He's like, Taco Bell. 25 years in Japan.
It's a restaurant chain here. Sorry. Fast food. But, you know, with photography, it's the same thing because it's, you know, f-stops, shutter speed, ISO, and different combinations of those to give you the look that you want, whether it's a shallow depth of field for portraits or whatever. The scene modes are just giving you different items on the Taco Bell menu that you might want.
The ironic thing about all of this last part of the conversation is that one of the best ways to learn that is to take away some of the technology that we have now. So you could just go out and buy the new Leica, and that would force you it would force you to actually think through some of that stuff. Or you could just buy a normal sort of cheap camera and just decide that you're not going to look at the LCD for a while, and then you can still go back and look at it later if you decide that you want to use the technology.
Yeah.
I tell people,
all right, Martin, you know, I gotta call this out because before we started recording, you were telling us that you've been living in Japan for 25 years or so. And we know that Japanese people tend to transpose their L's and R's, and you just called the LCD an RCD. I just want to go on record.
I thought I said
the RCD.
Yeah? Oh, okay. That was a bit
stupid. That's awesome.
Now you're a full-blown local, man. Congrats.
Yeah. Look at that. You made it. You made it.
And of course, we are going to be buying a Leica and not a Leica.
Yeah, it's a Leica. Yeah. And you're going to take some pictures at Lead Lobster. I love it. Cool. All right. All right, guys, we're going to take a quick break and talk about Sony. So Sony is reportedly working on a smart contact lens that could let you take a photo by simply blinking your eyes.
Here we go.
Augmentation. All right, guys, we're back. So Sony sounds like this is futuristic stuff. This is like Ghost Protocol, Iron Man
Report. Yeah.
Minority Report stuff. I think most of us have always wanted something like this, where you could put especially if you have to wear contact lenses already. Wouldn't it be great to have a contact lens that could also do all this other stuff? And I think this is like what Google, I think, with the Google Glass of 2036 would be, where it's just a contact lens, a set of contact lenses you put in your eye. I don't know. Jose, what do you think? This is, so basically it's a lens that does camera type operations and feeds data into your head.
With that said, the idea of having an Iron Man type HUD all the time, cool. But for now, saying it's just another Google Glass. Well, look how good Google Glass went. It didn't go very well, right?
Well, that's because people could see it. Imagine if no one could see it, and you could get data on people around you, and they wouldn't know you were getting data on them.
Yeah, like a
You're on a
Terminator
date.
type
You're on a
thing.
date with your date's Tinder profile hovering above her head, right?
Yeah, where she's putting out statuses like this date sucks, and you're
Yeah,
like,
and you're
oh
reading
man,
it.
oh,
And
this
you're
is really
reading it
good.
live. You're like, oh yeah, are you enjoying
You just,
yourself? Yeah,
you just
honey.
like it. You just like it.
Yeah,
I see you.
yeah.
I
I don't know.
don't
I mean,
know.
do you want this, Jose? Is this something that millennials feel like they need in their lives?
To be fair, like we talked about, I'm on the tail end, but yeah.
You're still in there. It's binary.
I
You
know,
got.
yeah, I'm still in there. I think like anything, I'm huge on like the sociology of a lot of things. So to me, it's like how this is gonna play out in society is more interesting to me than owning it, right?
Yeah.
Like what we saw with Google Glass. All of a sudden, anyone who wore it, everyone around them was on edge, thinking they were taking pictures or recording them, and people were freaking out.
Yeah.
Or like you were suddenly some snob who was like, like a Silicon Valley type. And that wasn't really the case. That wasn't at least what it was
I
supposed
resemble
to
that
do.
remark, by the way, the
Yeah,
Silicon Valley
exactly.
type.
Exactly. You know, go jump in your Tesla, pull out your Leica, and go take a picture of something else. But but at the same time, it's interesting to see if that, to me, like if it takes hold and suddenly it becomes more accepted, and like you said, if I could sit there and just look out and see a beautiful sunset, not have to do anything but blink, and then upload that photo somewhere, that's cool. But like I feel like there's a lot of time in between till we get to that point where it's no longer like Big Brother watching you and NSA's tapping in your contact lens, and you know what I mean. Like there's people
Yeah,
who
I don't
literally,
know.
there's
I
people who like
embrace.
tape their cameras on their computers. They think the FBI
That's
is.
what I do, just like that.
Yeah, see, exactly. Because they think the FBI is like turning it on and just like
No,
recording them.
it's not the FBI. I read several articles that say hackers can log in and turn on your webcam, and it's being done and has been done. I mean, nests have been hacked, and people are looking at each other's house. No, I hear you, but I don't know. I guess the baby boomer in me looks at this, and I think.
Wait, are you really?
I think I am.
Close enough. I mean,
I think I am. I don't know what the windows are. I don't know. I'm not a millennial, that's for sure.
no.
But I look at this and I say, like with all this stuff that's inundating us all the time, all this data and all these different tools, social networks and all that. I get like honestly, sorry Apple, but I am starting to get annoyed by the notifications that come in on my Apple Watch because you're in the middle of something, you're concentrating and reading and into this thing, and then a new tweet or a new Trello post or a new Slack post or a new email, it's like I can never get deep thought like we used to. You can't because you're always interrupted. And now I think of this thing and I'm like, oh, now I can't even not look at something.
Hold on. You see my watch?
Yeah, analog.
It does nothing, right? So I mean, you could argue that. You could argue, sure you can. Just take off your Apple Watch for an hour.
Yeah.
You won't be bothered.
Right. Yeah, which I do all the time. And sometimes it finds itself on the other side of the room. So I don't know. Martin, what do you think? Is this something that you would wear? A futuristic contact lens that feeds data into your brain?
I'm not sure about the feeds data in the brain thing, but I think I mean it's gonna happen. All of this stuff we resist. I think that with the first thing that comes to mind is privacy, of course. If you can just put this contact lens in and there's no way of knowing that you're even videoing something, then there's obviously huge privacy problems. But I think as the human race develops further over the next 100 years or so, I think privacy is going to become a thing of the past. I think it's going to be all about everyone sees everything, and if you need to stop something happening, then it's more about what you do to actually stop people getting into your place and stealing stuff, rather than stopping them using. I mean, using a webcam and things like that it can be done, but it's not something that I'm going to worry about. But it's like even in the streets. You go out in the streets now, everything's on CCTV. Surveillance cameras have pretty much got everything covered. So the moment you're out of your house, there is no
It's free
privacy
game.
anymore.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
free game.
And we
Yeah.
complain about that too. I mean, we complain about there's especially in London they say that city is leads in terms of having every
Wired.
square inch
Oh,
covered with CCD. And then we're like, oh, that's such an invasion of privacy, blah blah blah, until something happens, like
Yeah, and then
a
it makes
bomber
really
or
good that it
some
was on
yeah,
CCTV.
yeah, a terrorist
Yeah,
attack or something, and now everyone wants that footage, right?
yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah.
you
Yeah.
can't have your cake and eat it too. I was
It's a
looking at
fine
this
line for sure.
this Sony article. I'm thinking, okay, A7s, which everyone loves. Jose, you have one, right?
Yeah.
Great camera, battery life.
Oh God,
So
it sucks.
it felt like, okay, now you're gonna put Sony's track record for battery life on something that goes in your eye. You're gonna get like maybe 5 blinks before you gotta go change your contact lens. Like, what's going?
It's bad. Like I bought it when a friend of mine worked for Sony, and quite honestly, that was the only reason I bought it was because I got like a crackhead deal.
Yeah.
But because I did, I made sure to get the 3528, the Zeiss, so it wasn't cheap. I got an extra battery and the charger because that camera, I don't know about now, it only came with a cord, which
Yeah.
I hate. I
I
hate
think
that.
it's still like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. So I was like, even like the Nikons and stuff, they come with a battery charger. So it's like, I got the wall charger and an extra battery, so I always have one going. But I mean, yeah, and it's so funny. So you mentioned that. So like, I mean, when I had like a D300, literally the battery grip was 2 batteries, so I could legit not pick up my camera for a month, pick it up, and it still got juice. And then I laughed when I went to like the D4 and the D3S, where it's supposedly a battery the size of 2 batteries, but in reality it's the same. It's the same exact kind of power, just
Right.
one battery.
Right.
So
Right.
even those aren't as good as what I used to get out of just putting a vertical grip on another camera.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
So,
that's an issue. So when you look at this thing, I'm like, okay, unless they come up with some sort of revolutionary way to power it, like it's being powered from your body somehow,
like
and
BTU, like body heat or
yeah,
something.
yeah,
Yeah.
like body heat or some kind of solar. You got to stare
Mhm.
at the sun for 5 minutes to get your. So, try not to go blind or something.
What are you doing? Charging.
Yeah, exactly,
Looking up at
exactly.
light.
But
Yeah.
Martin, you hit it right on the head, man. If you fast forward, science fiction bears out, this thing comes into existence and it actually works, and they solve the battery issue and all that. Then it becomes privacy. The thing with Google Glass was people wearing Google Glass, you could see them, and the whole glass hole
Yeah. So I
moniker
forgot
popped up.
about that. That was
Yeah,
good.
that came out, and then people in the restrooms wearing their Google Glass. It's like all that stuff happened.
Stop.
Yeah,
Oh
yeah,
man.
yeah. That was a whole thing, and of course, that was the beginning of the end for that being a viable take over the world kind of technology. If you miniaturize that and put it inside, I would even argue like your glasses or my glasses, Martin. If you put it in glasses that don't look like glass hole
Mm.
type glasses, it becomes more viable. If no one knows
Like
that
that
you're
little tiny screw you got there. Yeah,
yeah,
like that
exactly.
was it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a camera, and I could see, a readout in like, a heads-up display over your head, what's going on if I want. That would be interesting, but to make me wear something that looks like I'm wearing something is defeating purpose.
Right.
And then this takes it to the next level. So now, I think there was this what was it? Black Mirror. Did you guys ever see that show? Google it. I think it's on Netflix. It's called Black
Google it.
Mirror. It's called Black Mirror. It's a science fiction show where people had these kinds of glasses. And
Mhm.
not only did they have these kinds of contact lenses, rather, they recorded everything they saw. And they could sit back later and review their day and zoom in on certain areas. Like I could be having a conversation with you, Martin, and then later I could review the conversation and zoom in on your face to see your micro expressions to see, oh, he was lying right there.
Yeah, yeah.
Like you said, then you go into a whole thing about people with way too much time on their hands, and I don't think technology is going to matter. There's going to be a person who's going to find a way, to exploit that kind of stuff, no matter how. Yeah, I don't know, but it reminds me. You guys ever seen the movie Her?
Oh yeah, with Joaquin Phoenix, right?
Yeah, like that I could see where we become so attached where suddenly, like you said, we're hyper connected, but we're disconnected, all that, to the point where like people just walk around talking to their operating system and having like full blown relationships with them.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. And just like in today's world, your operating system will likely cheat on you, just like it did in the movie.
Yeah, where they all, I hate to ruin it for anyone who hasn't watched it, they all collectively leave. It's very strange. It's
It is
kind
a
of like
good
a
movie, though.
walkout, like a union thing, but
Yeah.
it's weird.
It was a good movie. It was a good
Hey,
movie.
let me tell this stupid joke, right? And I'll never do it again. Well, I might do, but
Go for it. Go for it.
so we were talking about like embedded devices, right? There's
Hmm.
these three guys sitting at a bar, and one of them says, they're sitting there, and all of a sudden his hand starts buzzing, and he says, "What's that?" And he says, "Oh, I've had a phone embedded into my fingers." And he starts to talk into he's got the receiver in here, and he's talking in that. And then the next moment, the guy in the middle, he starts making a buzzing sound, and he's like, "Oh, hello." Has a quick conversation. Says, "Oh yeah, I've had a phone built into my vocal cords and my ears." And then the next guy on the end sitting there, and he says, and he says, "What's that?" He says, "Oh, excuse me, gentlemen, I've just received a fax."
You laugh.
Sorry about that.
You laugh. But that is where the world is going, my friends.
Well, I mean, that shows my age because no one uses fax anymore anyway. So it's like,
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. I know. I don't know. Jose, you're gonna be hosting a show, and on your show, you're gonna have a triennial.
Triennial.
And he's gonna
I'm
be
trying to
like,
think what. So they call so like our kids. We have a 10-year-old son and a 9-year-old daughter, and what do they call them? Centennials or something like that.
Centennials? Oh.
Because they were born right after the turn of the century or something like that. And I was
Mm.
like, oh, that's good. I guess I get that.
well,
It's kind of
those
cool.
kids are 16 now. I mean, look at it.
Yeah.
It's like they're already pretty much adults,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
born this millennium.
Crazy, crazy. All right, guys, I was trying to get to story 3 again, and we've been trying to get to this DJI
wow.
story for 2 weeks already. Bruce is gonna kill me for not getting to it. But we're gonna
That's
skip
cool.
it is. We're
Wow.
gonna skip it. This is a great story. I mean, so I'll tease this. I'll foreshadow this for next week, and Bruce will make this story number 1
I was
for
going to
next
say, I think they should move it up in the
We'll
queue.
move it up. We'll move it up to story number 1. So a couple weeks ago, NAB DJI showed up a couple of new products. One of them is the most powerful drone that they've made to date. It's called the Matrix 600, and a new aerial gimbal called the Ronin MX. It's just a big octocopter that is just amazing. It is
It's
amazing.
basically a Batmobile tumbler in
Yes.
drone form.
Yes. And this thing will carry obviously a DSLR, but it will also carry a Blackmagic camera, a Canon, a Panasonic, a Red, a Sony, Nikon, and it can fly for 15 minutes with a 13.2 pound payload, which is
Wow.
doesn't sound like a lot, but that's heavy and that's a long
Yeah.
time, especially if you sketch out your shot first. You don't really need 13 minutes or
Yeah.
15 minutes.
Or you figure it's like it can actually make bridges that soldiers can cross over. I wouldn't be surprised, honestly.
Yeah, yeah. The drone industry is just it never ceases to amaze me. All this cool stuff coming out, and we've only just begun.
I was gonna say, do you really think that that's where Amazon's going in terms of
Nah.
delivery? No.
No, because if they do, the radius would have to be within 20 minutes of the Amazon fulfillment center, or actually 10 minutes or less, right?
Mhm.
Because most drones only have like a 25 minute flight time.
Right, but maybe that's what they improve upon.
Yeah, but so I mean, it's a size weight thing. So you get bigger,
Right.
you make a more dangerous thing that's flying around with these blades, And so at some point it doesn't make sense. And then you fly into bad neighborhoods, and people start ordering these drones so they can steal the drone.
Ooh, that's a good call.
That's what I would
They
do.
would never
Hey,
yeah.
I'm gonna order a drone. That drone is
Yeah.
mine.
Like, I don't know what happened to it.
I don't know.
Mm.
I don't know. I think it's an interesting concept, but I doubt. I'm happy to eat my words, but I doubt Amazon's drone payload program will fly.
Yeah,
Literally.
I mean they're getting there because they're like now if in Baltimore or in Maryland we have a fulfillment center,
Mhm.
and if you live in the city you can do like one day, like not even
Yeah.
Prime. It's
Yeah.
like
Yeah, I have one here too. Same thing.
Okay.
Yeah, and they deliver on Sundays too. It's
Nice.
crazy.
There's a golf course here in Japan that has just started doing delivery to the tees via drones. They've started with I think they're doing a 1 month or a 3 month evaluation period, but you can on your phone you can order like an extra box of balls or a bag of teas, or I think you can even order drinks and things, and it will fly it from the clubhouse to the hole, and then you can just sit and wait.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
That is
doing that. That's
I don't know if
see,
I want a Long Island iced tea on a drone.
yeah, I want to see that. Yeah, I want to see the drone bring a drink out there without spilling it. Yeah, that's interesting because that brings up all kinds of things. Can you imagine like being in Mexico or in the Caribbean or something, and you're out on your little private cabana, and you don't want to be disturbed, but you're you need a refresh of your martini, your Grey Goose martini, extra dirty, and you're like, hey, hit a button and it comes out, drops it off. That would be kind of
Yeah, but you better hope that drone specifically doesn't have a gimbal with a little camera attached to it, because then the whole privacy thing comes into play.
Exactly. Hey, double-edged sword, my friend. If you want the martini, you got to take the breach of privacy. All right, guys, let's jump into the picks of the week. This is a segment where you guys can recommend anything to the TWiP audience as long as it's somehow related to the topic of photography. Jose Rosado, the angry millennial, I'm going to let you go first. This is your first time on TWiP proper. What's your pick of the week?
So my pick of the week, because I'm an idiot and didn't really know what pick of the week was, is I'll be honest. Anyone who's known or been on long on the journey for the angry millennial would see that I've been so blessed when I started my podcast to be able to sit and speak with amazing people. Jeremy Cowart, Chase Jarvis, I mean, the list goes on, Colin Smith, who've all done really awesome things. And quite honestly, it is all because I started a podcast. So I have a link on there for an article I wrote in F-Stoppers a while ago that is 5 reasons every business should have a podcast. And I wholeheartedly believe that. I mean, it's 2016, yet a lot of billion and multi-million-dollar companies still market like it's the year 1996. Dumping tons of money into commercials nobody watches anymore, direct mail nobody looks at, they rip up. But again, they do that because a lot of people operate under the guise of it's the way things were always done. And I tell people podcasts are 10 years old. They're not exactly brand new. But it's still now, like we said, the barrier of entry is so low that anyone can get into it for literally like $50 if you want it.
That's very true. Yeah.
And it makes it all the more reason, because have a vehicle to talk about your brand, have a vehicle to be able to never pay for a conference ever again, going as press and get access to all these amazing people. It's well worth it.
Yeah, no, that's a really good pick, and I 100% agree with that, especially from the standpoint of it opening doors to you that wouldn't ordinarily be opened to you.
That's how we met.
Yeah, exactly. And then on the topic, yeah, exactly. And on the topic of like corporations not getting it, you got to think about these corporations where they move slowly because they can't move any faster than what they're moving, and they're like, dude, first it was this blogging thing, we had to have a blog. Or no, first it was a website thing. We had to have a website, so we finally got our website. Now we have to have a blog, and now all these social media networks, we have to be on social media. We're not relevant, and now you're telling me podcast. I have to have a podcast. So that's the conversation that's happening in these companies.
Now they're freaking out, right?
Yeah, now they're freaking out again.
They're like, we just got our site mobile optimized. It's like, Jesus. My God. Exactly. The iPhone's been out for almost 10 years. Good job.
Yeah, but it's good. That means there's a market. There's a market for this stuff.
Yeah.
Like you said, podcasting's been around for a while. This is episode 464 of
That's
this
sick.
This show.
Anything that you can do for like 500? I
have something gigantic and surprising planned for 500.
Ooh,
yeah. It's gonna be. I can't talk too much about it, but it's gonna shake up the podcasting world. Let's just say that.
Whoa. Okay. All right.
Shake it up.
So I can't wait to see Martin's because it looks pretty cool.
What?
I have no idea what it is.
Martin's what? Martin's podcast?
No, Martin's pick. Martin's.
Speaking of podcasts, Martin's show is older than TWiP. Just so that you.
Wow.
Just for if you count the rings on the tree, Martin's show is older than this one, right, Martin?
I'll be releasing episode 522 this week.
Look
So.
at that.
Wow.
And I'm a day late. I'm a day late because I've been messing around with the music for that video. So
Yeah.
I'm slipping.
So Martin, I got to ask you this: what was it like? Kind of like I still have a 256 megabyte CF card somewhere, which makes me laugh. But what was it like running a podcast and having to pay like $1,000 a month for bandwidth?
I never did it. I found cheap ways to do the bandwidth thing. Now I use Libsyn, and they're great. But the biggest thing for me was back then there were no plugins. WordPress wasn't that impressive. There were no plugins, so I ended up having to, again, the geek in me, I ended up having to go in using
like hand code everything,
and hand code everything. And even today, when I release a podcast, I still access a page. I've ported it to WordPress, but I have pages in WordPress that I go into to enter the details for the episode, and then I publish it and I save it in a database. Excuse me. I save it in a database, and it's all my own back end because I had to build it 10 years ago because there was nothing there.
Yeah.
So, but it was fun. It was good times, and and as you were saying earlier, Jose, it's opened so many doors. I'm sitting here now on a weekday in Japan, and I'm paying my bills through photography and photography-related work because of the podcast. So
no, I believe it. I believe it. I mean, and the people don't get that. Like, people go, "Oh, well, can you make money on it?" And it's like, well, it's one of two things. A, is the quality good enough, and are you consistent enough? Because like most things in life, it's going to take a little bit of time to get good enough to be able to get paid for anything you do, whether it's photography or podcasting. But it definitely is scary to say. Not scary. It's fun to say that you can do something, in the comfort of your own home in your pajamas and get money and get paid. For a lot of people who get dressed up and drive 2 hours each way to a job they hate just because they need the money. I don't know.
Yeah. And the other, I think you hit it right on the head. The magic word with this stuff is consistency.
Oh yeah.
Because a lot of people, unfortunately, in the podcasting space, and you can go look on iTunes in the podcasting directory and see mountains of podcasts that have been started, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 year ago with 1 or 2 episodes in there because someone had a wild hair that they wanted to start a podcast. It's going to be amazing, and they get all wound up and they do it and they realize, oh, jeez, this is a lot of work.
You know what's sad? I looked it up, and if you most podcasts don't go past episode 5. So when I do consulting work, I tell people if you go between 5 to 10 episodes, like budget that out and just put those in the can. And if you get to episode 10, you're literally in like the top 15, 20% of iTunes just on that metric alone.
Totally.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and then if you keep it up, you'll be like old G. Martin Bailey over here. You're rocking it. Martin has a gold cane with a microphone on it, and a cape.
So Martin, were you what, 07, 08, 06? What, from
it was
the beginning?
September 2005. So I was the 3rd photography podcast in iTunes.
Holy crap! Who were the first 2? I don't even know.
So
Tips
before me,
from the top floor, right? Was in there.
Yep, Tips from the top floor. From the top floor, Chris Marquardt's show was one, and the other was Brooks Jensen's Lens Work.
Right. Yeah.
Brooks Jensen still releases podcasts occasionally now as well. And they were both, and I literally respect both of those shows. I listened to them and I'm thinking, I can do this. So 2 days later I'd got a back end coded, and 3 days later I was recording the first episode. It was crap. I had to re-record it 2 or 3 times because I didn't have the gear. But it's and as you've said a number of times, the biggest key to success is, well, obviously the quality of the audio and the quality of the production is important, but doing it every week. I think if you're going to do a podcast, it has to be at least once a week. Some people tried less, but you need to do it.
Like you said, it doesn't work not only for your audience but for you. You do it once a month, and then you have 1 month where you're like, who cares if I miss it? No one's really.
And it happens. It happens.
And then you look at people like John Lee Dumas who do a daily one.
Yeah.
you know, and
Don't
you
get me
go,
started on that one.
yeah, you go respect because that's so
Yeah.
much work. But you know what?
That's a lot of
That
work.
dude has a multi-million-dollar podcast.
And
Like,
you know why he does? Part of why he does, aside from being, talented and really good on the mic, is that he is A, consistent,
hmm
and B, he keeps those things short and
yep,
engaging, but
yeah,
C, he built a back-end machine that he's able to build these. So
oh
like with
yeah,
TWiP, like we were
yeah,
talking offline, Jose, a while
yeah,
back. With TWiP, I don't edit the show, I don't put the ads in,
yeah,
I don't,
yeah, yeah.
Bruce Clark does the show notes, and there's a bunch of people that make TWiP happen. If those folks weren't there, this show would have been dead years ago,
Yeah,
literally.
no, and you said it. It's definitely like that's where I'm at. So where you guys have been doing for a long time, I'm still in the dirt phase where I'm touching dirt with my hands every day, which is
Hmm.
fine because to me it's like, but me and Frederick were talking about, I'm at the point now where I know I'm gonna become the single point of failure for
Yeah,
the show, and
yeah,
that's not cool, you know.
yeah.
So if you want to scale, it's like already like we just switched this week. We just switched this week to a 3 day a week format, and it's see the grays, they're coming.
I was gonna say,
Coming.
yeah, you're like this week you put some extra weight on the barbells, then.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, yeah. So we'll see. I mean, I definitely know because now the show's starting to make some money. It's not to the point where it's actually making profit, but it's making money. So it's like, all right, cool. Like, but again, that's why it's to me it's easy because I'm doing everything. Like my girlfriend helps produce it, and occasionally I have a co-host as well. But it's I do all the editing, I do all the blog post writing, making all the stuff. So it's for me it's like I'm keeping costs down, but at the same time I'm realizing that if I want to start a couple more shows, it's gonna have to be a more of a production just
Yeah,
for the
you
sake
gotta,
of
gotta build
keeping it afloat.
you gotta build a machine in
Yeah.
order to keep it going beyond just kind of a hobbyist kind of operation. If
Right.
you want to grow it beyond that, you have to put in processes and bring people that are smarter than you on
Mm-hmm.
their tasks into place. Like I feel like I'm pretty good at doing this
Mm-hmm.
and hosting the show. Suzanne is a master editor and makes us
Yeah.
sound really good,
Yeah.
and takes out all our uhs and
And
makes
I'll
it sound
say
like we
these
actually have
programs are
sense.
sick. So Bruce, a tip to the hat of you, sir, because when Suzanne sent me these, she sent me like a last week's one to look over, and I was
Yeah.
like, oh, I don't do nearly all this. I'm like, oh, this is great, and I usually put mine like an Evernote on a
Yeah.
Google Doc. I don't know, but still, it's yeah, it definitely
Yeah.
you can see a stark difference between your back end and mine.
It is. I mean, but this is. I mean, come on. I mean, this is
Yeah.
464 episodes of
Yeah.
evolution.
Yeah, exactly. That's
So,
true. I'm at like
you
let's
know,
see, in the can, I'm like in the 80s.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean,
So
you're barely crawling out of the ocean onto dry land right now. So we're
still a single cell organism.
you still have scales, man. Come
Yeah,
on.
I'm an amoeba.
But you see where it's going though. So
Exactly.
it's all
No,
good.
yeah, yeah. No, believe me, I respect you guys a lot because that was my thing. Was like I sat here and said, well, how long could I do it? I don't know. Let's do it until it stops becoming fun. And already we're at like almost at episode 100,
Yeah.
and now I'm like, I'm just getting started. I could definitely because like you said, it's one of those things where I think that for a lot of people who've done it for a long time, they say if you're consistent, the magic number is 6 months to a year.
Hmm.
If you're consistent at 6 months to a year, you will start getting an inkling on whether or not it's sustainable or you can keep going.
Yeah.
And for me, I've been noticing exactly that. Like at about the 6 month mark, I was like, all right, this is going good. Like I can, all right, let's keep going. And it's just keep building on it and building on it and realizing that like everything we do that's remotely creative, you have to suspend a little bit of the expectations. Like be hard on yourself, sure. Have aspirations and goals, sure. But if you're sitting there just looking at the numbers with a microscope, you're just gonna drive yourself
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah, you will. That's like, back in the dot-com boom when everyone was writing the reload key on their E-Trade accounts. You can't do it. You'll drive yourself crazy.
Right. Yeah.
But Martin, like on the podcasting, maybe before we get to your pick of the week, on the podcasting thing, one of the keys to success, like Jose was saying, is consistency. And for me, I'm able to sustain that consistency because it's almost like working out, right? Every Monday at 6 p.m., I'm sitting in this chair and doing this for an hour, and for me, it's not a chore. It's like I get some kind of weird podcasting endorphins from doing the show, that I miss if I don't do the show.
Yeah.
Do you find the same thing?
Yeah, I mean, I'm still a one-man band, but my whole company is a one-man band. So when I'm not podcasting, I'm the accountant. Well, not the accountant. I'm the guy that prepares the accounts for a real accountant.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the marketer. I'm the photographer. I'm everything. But for me, what that means is that I put Mondays aside. If I've got nothing planned by Sunday evening, it doesn't matter, because on Monday morning I sit down and I will start to prepare an episode, and by Monday evening it's in the feed normally. And it's an ironic week to do that, because I've been trying to put out this slideshow and I wanted to get it finished yesterday, and I'm not happy with the music, so it's still sitting on my hard drive, and I don't have a podcast in the feed yet. So I either get that sorted today and put it in the feed, or I'm going to be a couple of days late. But
see, that's that single point of failure that Jose was talking about. See,
well, the thing is it's sometimes if I do a podcast that I know is going to take a while, I give it 3 or 4 days and I prepare it the week before.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that. I started preparing this slideshow last Wednesday, and it's still not done. So,
Wow.
So the other thing, I mean, and I'm going to talk about this, is my pick of the week is actually part of the process. It's not part of the problem. I've started using the new version of Boink Software's Photomagico. So,
all right, we'll jump into that and tell us about your pick of the week.
So that's my pick of the week. I've been using Photomagico on and off over the years. I think since version 3 I originally bought. But the latest version fully supports 4K. I think they've had it since 4.5, but version 5 I can output it's a bit finicky, but if you get the settings right, you can easily output a 4K video. I previewed the slideshow on my, I think it's like a 56-inch or 60-something inch 4K TV last night, and the video quality is amazing. So I wanted to give a shout out for the people at Boink Software. Photomagico 5, it's stable, working great, and it's got a lot. It's not quite as much control as you might have if you do this totally in, say, Premiere, Adobe's Premiere Pro. But if you don't mind giving up just a little bit of that control, it's got enough control to still do a really, really nice slideshow. It's got rolling credits for the end. It's got pretty much everything you need. So good work on that for the folks at Boink Software. Photomagico 5 Pro is a winner in my books.
And I'm trying to see, they've got a nice little slideshow in here. Let's take a look. And if you're listening to this, or you just listen to the audio, you can come to the website and check it out. I'm going to turn this audio down. So these guys have been around for a while. I think I was introduced to Photomagico, or at least the product, from Derek Story. Derek Story talked about them all the time. And every time I saw these guys, I was always like, yeah, that's cool, but why do I need a standalone application when I have, like you said, I have Keynote, I have Adobe Premiere, I have Final Cut Pro, I've got all these tools that I can do slideshows in my sleep. Why would I need something purpose-built? Then I tried it because Derek was recommended. I'm like, okay, if Derek recommends it, let me try it. And I'm like, okay, now I understand what happens when you focus energy on something, on a single thing, and you do it better than anybody else. And that's what these guys did. They're like, okay, how do we make slideshows that crush it, and make them as easy as possible to create? So, yeah.
I think it reminds me of, like, the only thing I remember similar was when I first started and I worked at that studio. We used Animoto to do like the slideshows for the client presentations of the final edited images. But this is really cool. I'll definitely look into this because it's pretty neat. And like you said, it's funny. Like I used to have, back in the day, sites that you had hard code, and you sit there and say, okay, you can have a lot of control, but at the same time, now you have, CMS style websites like Squarespace or 22 Slides, where you sit there and say, I'll gladly give up some of that to have something that just is easier to manage, you know what I mean, or is easier to update or whatever. And I think we all agree to that. I mean, you have a respect to the fact that you know how to fix it when it breaks, but beyond that, it's like you kind of know enough that you don't want to be bothered with it anymore.
Yeah. And we're looking at these slides. These slides are really cool, and they have music in here. Yeah, that was one of the things. And a lot of people are saying, hey, I have Lightroom. Lightroom has a slideshow module, but it's nowhere near this level of power. It's like, this is like sit down restaurant versus drive through, right?
It's like on Lightroom, it's literally a feature of a bigger tool, but when you have a company that literally is just like their entire R&D and their dev team is just working on this one thing, it's going to be a little bit better, or a lot better, than something that just it's a feature of it,
Yeah. Very good, Martin. That was a good pick of the week, man. Awesome.
Good
Look
stuff.
at that. And how much is this thing? I'm trying to.
I think it's only like $100, $70 or something for an upgrade. I'm not sure.
Yeah, so no, it's Photo Magico 5. It looks like it's 49, so $50. And Pro is
version,
Pro is 100. What do they give? What do you get in the Pro? Oh, here's a grid. Okay, I see.
Yeah, the Pro's a lot more.
$100 for anything nowadays.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're gonna get it, go for the Pro. I mean, even if you start with the Lite, you're gonna pay the same amount as you pay double what you would pay for the Lite version for the Pro anyway. It's, in my opinion, it's just best to go straight for the Pro because it gives you all of the features and you don't have to mess around working around limitations.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a lot of boxes ticked on the right.
Yeah. And granted, marketing people are always going to do that, but looking
still,
at
that's like disparaging.
It doesn't make for $100, for something this powerful. Why cheat yourself? Getting something.
I mean, the standalone player, chapters, narration track. I mean, why would you not want all of that? Timeline view. Yeah,
you got to have that if you're going to get this. Cool. And Martin, you've used this obviously, right? So you're happy with it?
Yeah, I've been happy with it. I've got to be honest. I think it was 3 or 4 when I first upgraded. It was flaky as hell, and it was crashing all of the time. And then they released something that made it more stable. You had to have a separate bit of software running on the Mac. That's all gone now. I believe. But it's been stable as anything. It's not crashed on me. I've been using it pretty heavily over the last week, and it's not crashed once. So good work.
Very cool. Very cool. Awesome. All right. Well, I'm gonna download that tonight. Thank you, Martin. It better be as good as you say, or I'm coming after you. I'm coming, man. I'm coming for you. All right. Cool.
You'd be welcome.
Yeah, all right. I have a quick pick. I was in Canada for a couple of days. I just got back yesterday or last night, and my pick is kind of weird. My pick is a city. So Edmonton, Canada.
Oh, that's where Renee's from, right?
Yeah, Edmonton, Canada. Bruce Clark, who writes our show notes. I had dinner with he and Renee Robin. They're up there.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, it is. Edmonton is, I think, a hidden jewel of Canada because it is. It's hard to explain because when I got there, I had no basis of kind of comparison for it, and this was my first time in Canada too. So I'm like, I don't know, are Canadians nice? Do they hate Americans or whatever? So I get up there, everyone was overwhelmingly nice.
Yeah, it's actually kind of weird how nice they are.
It was. However, there was some at the first meal that we had. There were some anti-Trump comments that were coming from the table next to us, which, granted, we all make those too. So, so
they just assume though. Like when I used to travel, I went to Spain when I was in college, and it was around W. Bush's tenure. So it was like you said, they automatically knew you from the States. They automatically were like, "Oh, you voted for Bush, didn't you?" I'm like, what? Like where's that even coming from? Like, but
we had some really interesting conversations because it was like, there's all this like Americans, we love America, but we don't like this thing, and I was like, yeah, that's a nice iPhone you have there. Hey, what are you driving, a Ford? Oh, that's a nice Ford you're driving.
Yeah, that you paid $50,000 for because they taxed the crap out of it.
Exactly, but it was interesting. The hotel I was staying in was a place where a lot of the refugees from the Fort McMurray fire we're at, because Fort McMurray, if you're not familiar with it, it's a city in Canada that just, for whatever reasons, was on fire, like an unprecedented fire of the century, displacing, I think it was 80,000 people or something. The entire place
Wow.
got evacuated, and there's, Canadians going everywhere, and it was a good exercise in how a country comes together to help part of their people that are in need, right? So,
Mm.
like, even my hotel, like everywhere you went in the city, I was taking pictures. Even coffee shops were saying, Fort McMurray, visitors, coffee's on us, things like
Oh
that,
wow, that's
all over
neat.
the place. The
Yeah,
hotel
that's
had
cool.
beds set out and water and, all this stuff. And it
Mhm.
was like, wow, I wonder if this would have happened in my country. Probably, but maybe in some regions, maybe
Yeah,
not.
yeah.
It was,
I mean, you look at like Hurricane Katrina and 9/11, that kind of stuff. I mean,
yeah, yeah, don't, yeah, that came up, the Katrina thing. Let's not talk about that. So that didn't go so well for our country.
well, at least on the government side. But
Yeah,
more
on
other
the government
people
side.
around there were very accommodating. But
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. The citizens always pull together. It seems like in this country, it's the
yeah,
government that we gotta look up.
I think that's the same for most countries.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, but it was good. So my pick of the week is Edmonton, Canada, and St. Albert. So, well, I'll leave you guys with this thing.
Hmm.
So, night before last, I flew back yesterday morning, or yesterday afternoon. I flew back. The night before last, my last night there, the Aurora Borealis came out.
Mm.
And I was like, I mean, this is my first time in Canada, and they're like, yeah, it normally doesn't come out this time of year. And you
Oh,
know,
that's cool.
we exit, we're looking outside, and I look up, and it's like this huge screensaver in the sky. I'm like, and it's just, yeah, it's like hard to get your brain. I mean, I know what the Aurora Borealis is, from a scientific standpoint, and I'm like,
All right.
okay, yeah, so yeah, we have a magnetic field, and the charged particles are coming in, but then you look at it, and it's like, that's just art,
Yeah,
this
I was
is
gonna say
beautiful art
you're at a
undulating.
loss for words. Yeah.
Yeah, you just stand there, and it's like it's huge. You're like, you can't make anything like that. It's
Yeah.
it was amazing. So that was my last one of my last experiences with Edmonton, was to see the Aurora Borealis.
That's amazing. Well, like you said, if that's your experience in Canada, you did an amazing job.
Yeah.
I didn't have that cool of an experience the few times I went up there, but uh, yeah, I mean, like my girlfriend's a big space nerd,
Yeah.
and I'm like, right? So then I came across this, I don't know what it was, like some sort of satellite that has a crazy camera on it that caught a star going supernova and collapsing,
Okay.
and it was the same thing. I was watching, going, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. I'm a space
like,
nerd too, by the way. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So it's like you look at that, and again, you could tell me exactly why it did what it did, imploding on itself, all that stuff. But when you watch it, you're just like, you're at a loss for words. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's when science meets art, kind
That's
of
right.
thing, where it's just like you got to respect it.
Yeah, and the depressing thing about that supernova is that that probably happened a couple 100 million years ago. So
we're just getting it now.
you're watching you're watching the delayed reaction of that, because light travels so slow.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So enough of that geeking out. That's my pick of the week. Edmonton, California. Before we break, guys, Martin Bailey, what do you have coming up that you'd like the TWiP audience to know about?
I've got a few notes here in our show notes. That I've been working really hard on this 4K video slideshow. I'm hoping to put something out, but the perfectionist in me doesn't want to release it with the music I've got at the moment. So I might have to switch to something else.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that like I said, a lot of office time at the moment. I've just completed a really good tour guide book for my Namibia tour that's coming up. That's next year, but we've got to sell the seats over the next couple of months. So if anyone's interested in going to Namibia with me, it's over half full, so it's going to happen. It's whether or not we take a second car now. So if you go to mbp.ac/Namibia and take a look there, it would be great to travel with any of you. And then one last thing is, this is a little bit dangerous to throw out there. I'm kind of hoping that there's only a few people listening after 2 hours, but
No, they hang in there, Martin. Sorry to tell you.
I know. So the thing is, I'm represented. I'm with a stock agency called Offset. It's like the elite leg of Shutterstock, and they've contacted me recently and asked me if I know of any great photographers that I could recommend to them. And I've got a few people that I want to recommend. But I'm going to throw out there, if anyone feels as though your work is good quality, really good quality photography, and you want to perhaps get involved with Offset, drop me a line. We'll put a link in the show notes or something, just to my contact page. Drop me a line with a link to I don't want a website, just a 25 images or something, a really good quality portfolio of the sort of work that you make. And I'm not going to commit to get back to everyone that talks. I'm going to mention this on my own podcast as well. I'm not going to commit to get back to everyone for one reason. I'm not going to be making the decision. If I say, yeah, your work's beautiful, and then recommend you to Offset, they could say, no, it's crap, and we don't want to know.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to say that I'll get back to everybody, but if you would like me to take a look at your work and consider recommending it to Offset so that you can actually start making some money from your photography, then go to mvp.ac/contact. Drop me a line, mention that you heard it on TWiP, and I'll give me that link to your website or your portfolio, and I'll take a look, and if it's worth talking with Offset about, I will, and then they'll make the decision as to whether or not they want to contact you.
Very good, very
Sweet.
good. And what kind of money can they make by participating in that program?
Well, some months I make a couple of $100. Some months I make in the thousands. They've actually I've never done an exclusive, exclusive licenses where you basically take the image off the market. I've never done that because usually people don't want to pay. But I've just made a 4-digit sale in dollars, a 4-digit sale for one photo with Offset for an exclusive license, and that's the sort of thing that doesn't happen often. And you've honestly, I wouldn't do it for all of my photos, but they wanted one that I was happy to sort of take off the market in other ways. So yeah, you can make a lot of money with it as well. On average, it's going to be a couple of $100 a month over the year, maybe a few thousand in the good months. But it's money that if you've got images just sitting on your hard drive that are quality images and you're not selling them any other way, and they don't necessarily want exclusivity. They just they will just put them up there, and obviously they curate it. That's part of what they pride themselves in. So it's a curated set of images. But
I think what's interesting is when you tell people about doing that sort of thing, right? So you're selling your images, not your services. It's a completely different type of photography, and I think like what you can appreciate is it's a lot of, once you've shot it, it's a lot of passive income. You know what I mean? Like you just put it up there and you can make money literally by just doing nothing else.
Like an annuity at that point,
right? And in that respect, yeah, it's more like a faucet dripping than being a commercial shooter and getting a 5-digit day rate, for something you shot. But it's a much different type of photography, So
yeah. Interesting. Cool, Martin. All right. Well, we'll link to that to your contact page, and that's good. Thanks for putting that request out there.
No problem.
Jose Rosado, man, what do you have?
Sure.
What do you have coming up? What are you working on? Where can people find you?
So the first thing I want to launch with is something that is a kind of like a passion thing for me, and I really have been kind of driving it and wanting to make it a lot bigger. It's a site called creatives-against-depression.com. So long short of it is, I'm old enough to know what it was like before social media, and I know that nowadays, even if you're not a self-employed person and you're not a creative, that a lot of times everyone realizes that right now the way everything is that we all have our own personal brand, and it's kind of scary that a lot of people sit there and say, I struggle with depression. Let's just say I struggle with the frustration of being a self-employed person, right? It's not easy. you know, and to say like you feel as though you can't complain about it openly in a public forum, whether it be social media or otherwise, because let's be honest, a lot of us look at it like that's how we get clients. And we sit there and say, well, we don't want our clients to think that we haven't booked anything in 3 months. We don't want our clients to think, that we're struggling and we're depressed. No, it's like
Mm-hmm.
my life's a highlight reel. I'm shooting here, I'm shooting there. Check out this new client, check out this new job I'm doing. Because again, we're always thinking of selling, and we're thinking of, well, if we show that we're not a commodity but we're a prized thing, an entity, that we're going to then book more work and vice versa. And quite simply, it's just not true. And I think what we're seeing is, especially amongst creatives, I mean, it's really crappy to say this, but think of how many comedians, actors, musicians, and the like take their lives every year, you
Yeah.
know? And it's because I think a lot of that is that problem, that people don't feel like they can talk about it, don't feel like they can admit they need help, in fear of losing everything they've built over time. And I really think it's sorry, Suzanne, but it's bullshit,
Yeah.
so you
Yeah.
know um so yeah, so I created that. For right now, it's a site, and it also has a Medium publication. So for anyone who knows what Medium is like an open kind of blogging writing platform where anyone can go on there and write articles and stuff like that. So publication is kind of like, if you think of like Flickr groups,
Mm-hmm.
you can add something to it, and all of a sudden it's part of a group and get more eyeballs on it.
Yeah.
Same thing. So we created one for Creators Against Depression on Medium, so people can can write however they want and just submit it. Because before it
Very
was
cool.
me saying, send it to me, I'll format it, I'll put it up, and then I kind of realized I didn't want that. I didn't want to feel as though anything people were sending me was edited per se.
Right.
So now I make it where you can write it however you want and just submit it to that, and I'll accept it.
Cool.
So yeah, so working on that. I might even start a podcast for that as well, seeing what that could do.
Good.
And my next project is really just continuing to make the Angry Millennial even better. Bigger guests, more kind of just playing around with the format a bit more.
Mhm.
We might do a couple episodes where we do like roundtable discussions, kind of like this. We just talk about certain topics and get everyone's opinion, and less kind of come away from the strict kind of interview style that is now.
Mhm.
And just working on my writing. So a lot of I got really into writing. I've always been into writing. I wrote a lot, growing up, but then as most people, I got into the impressionable years of middle school and high school, and suddenly it was sports and girls and cars, and
Of course.
and that stuff kind of fell on the wayside. So the last year I had a lot of time in my hands, and I figured, let me just get back into writing, and it's been great. I started writing for F-stoppers, and then got submitted stuff like Petapixel, and then had stuff on Thought Catalog, and now I write for pretty much for Chimera Lighting and for borrow lenses. So
Oh, cool. Yeah.
yeah, so it's been going well. So just continuing to put myself on Medium, because I knew about it for a long time, but just didn't put anything on there. And then once I got into it and realized it was a huge community, it was kind of fun, and doing more of that.
Love it. Cool, man. Yeah, you're busy, and
Yeah,
you have a day job where you're teaching and molding impressionable minds about photography, right?
yeah, yeah.
That's cool. Well, man, you did a great job. Thanks for coming on your
Thank you.
first debut edition of This Week in Photo, and you were on TWiP Talks today too.
Yeah,
So
which was I think my episode should be called TWiP Ramblings, but yeah, it's fine.
that's good. Yeah, that's a good name. Maybe I'll launch a show called TWiP Rambling.
Mm.
I don't think I have anything in the R's yet. Yeah, let me.
Yeah. We're just gonna run down the alphabet, just see what we can do.
Exactly. Cool. All right, quick rundown on me. I'll be speaking at the Out of Chicago conference in June, and then again at the Out of New York conference in October. We're launching a new product for the TWiP School next week. If you want to check out the TWiP School, just go to school.thisweekinphoto.com. And at the end of the year, in November, I'm heading back to Vietnam, and I'm taking 11 people with me to
Cool.
gallivant from Hanoi all the way down to Saigon. So
Wow, that's cool.
yeah. So if you're interested in having your life changed, eating good food while taking good pictures, we'll put a link in the show notes to where you can go and register for that.
So, quick question, Frederick.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, if you're going out of New York in October, are you just going to stay the whole month in New York? Because it's Photo Plus. Are you going to Photo Plus as well?
I haven't made up my mind about if I want to go to Photo Plus or not. So I may or may not, because that's a lot of New York. Because that's like
It is. It's a lot.
that's
That's why I was like,
I may want to get out of New York at that point.
that's what I mean. I'm like, I don't know if you want to just go back to or leave to then go back like a week later. That's why.
Yeah, but then again, I got to go to Vietnam, so it makes sense to fly to Vietnam from New York if I was there. So
Yeah.
I'm trying to work that out right now.
All right, we'll keep you posted.
Yeah,
We'll be at Photo Plus for sure.
Okay,
so.
okay, we'll hang
Yeah.
regardless, when I get there, we'll hang.
Right. Yep.
Cool. All right, guys, we're at the end of another episode of This Week in Photo. I want to thank our sponsors for this show, FreshBooks and Out of Chicago, for their support. Without them, TWiP would not be possible. Also, be sure to visit our website over at thisweekinphoto.com. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and if you happen to be watching this video on YouTube, be sure to comment down below, like, and subscribe. And with that, yeah, down there. Wait, Jose, do that. Wait, point down again. Yeah, down there. Yeah.
Where's my hand? There we.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. Comment.
Way too
Comment.
close.
Yeah, there you go. Comment, like, and subscribe where he's pointing. Yeah. Right there. All right, guys. And with that, it is time to take that lens cap off.